So how often, though, is it the deceased who's coming in and sitting down and saying, I want to do this?
The deceased to be?
Deceased to be, yes.
Not too many of the deceased come in like that.
Yeah, that would be very unusual.
So
That's another show.
Yeah. We'll have to go into supernatural.
Life's Third Act is a podcast dedicated to helping you get the most out of your retirement. Sponsored by TuckerAllen. Here's Attorney-CPA Joe Cordell.
Welcome to another episode of Life's Third Act. I think you'll enjoy today's show. It's a little bit of a discussion about a family that you've heard a lot about if you're from the St. Louis area. And so we want to talk a little bit about the history of that family in St. Louis and some things I think that you'll find very interesting if you've lived in or have any connection at all with the St. Louis area. But we also want to talk about something very practical, and that's the primary reason we have this guest, and that's planning for the cost of funerals. I mean, this is not a happy topic. Is this the first time we've dealt with this topic?
It definitely is. It seems kind of morbid, but it's necessary because our days are all numbered, right?
It's inevitable. So it's interesting, though, that we haven't dealt with this topic before in the last, 6 years of this show or so. So, but it is a topic that needs to be addressed. It needs to be discussed. As a matter of fact, if it's approached correctly, it produces a lot of relief, a lot of peace of mind, and takes a lot of worry out of a stage of life when you shouldn't be thinking about those things or having to be concerned about them. So we have also this same guest who's an authority on that topic and who can kind of give us an insider's view when you think about, how do I best plan for what will inevitably occur, but I don't know when it's going to occur. And how do I control cost and do things to minimize the stresses and whatnot that my family might deal with in the aftermath of my passing? So these are the sort of things we're going to talk about. Do you want to do a proper introduction of our guest, Jill?
I would love to. We have Tom Buchholz with us, the owner of Buchholz Mortuary. Tom, welcome. Buchholz has been around decades.
73 years.
I mean, almost a St. Louis institution. You had at one point, how many locations? 4?
4 locations.
Yeah, I remember the West. I would see the Chesterfield location more often, and have been there more than once related to friends or family. So 73 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, who started?
It was started by my grandfather, who was almost 60 at the time, and William G. Buchholz.
So this was a new business for him
at
age 60?
He had been in the funeral business for quite a while. It was kind of like crowdfunding. They sold stock, and that's how it got funded.
He was crowdfunding before it was cool.
Before it was the thing.
That's right. And so he ran it for a number of years, and then actually my father, Cletus Buchholz, ran it, and he ran it for a number of years.
Now, this was the first location was where?
West Florissant and Riverview, down the street from Lombardo's restaurant.
I remember that location when I was a kid. I grew up in Bellefontaine Neighbors.
Yeah, and so we had that one for a while, and then we also had one in Spanish Lake on Redmond Avenue, and then we had one in Old Town Florissant, 619 Rue St. Francis. And then we had one out in Chesterfield and one in St. Peter's on Mid-Rivers Mall Drive.
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing that one, too. So you all have downsized some.
Yeah, downsized. A number of them, my father and uncles and brother have all passed away. And so with the family, it's myself and my sister Cindy, that are in the family that still do it. I have some other siblings, but they're not in the business with us. So we kind of felt the need to downsize some and continue it like that.
I'm amazed and I'm impressed with families that manage to keep multiple generations interested in the family business. It's really hard to pull that off.
Yeah, I believe it's hard, and it's harder in the industry we're in than, like I have a brother and a sister who aren't in it, and it's because it's a taxing industry.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do it sometimes.
So when you were growing up, was it expected that you would go into the family business, or?
No, not at all. Actually, I went away to college and came back, and then actually I worked at the funeral home and worked evenings also, and evenings by that all night long and stuff like that, and went to night school too. And got an MBA, and then I worked for another industry, selling packaging products and stuff. And they kept telling me, we need you to come over here and work for us.
So your dad and how many brothers or sisters were involved in?
Well, there was, my grandfather was a twin. His twin was involved with it also. And then my dad was one of 5. 3 of them were involved with it. And then my brother was involved with it. And there was a brother-in-law that was involved with it also.
But not cousins of your...
No, none of the cousins were involved with it. And that's kind of how it is now. Like, I have a couple daughters, but they're out of town. And they have, their husbands have great jobs and great opportunities where they're at. And they don't really have an interest in it. And
They never did?
Never did, no. Mm-hmm. And then my brother Jim, he had 3 daughters also, and the same situation. They're all out of town, out in Las Vegas. So, like one of them left for a job out there, and then the other ones went out there and got jobs. And that's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah, in this world we live in. And so talk a little bit, if you would, about the industry. Are more people choosing to do cremations, and as a result, I guess that would affect the industry? Are people still having traditional funerals? Is there a trend away from that?
Yeah, they're definitely still having traditional services, and there is a trend more toward cremation, in addition to cremation with flame. There's flameless cremation.
What is that?
What is that? I know.
It's a process where they have like 95% water and 5% alkaline, and that's how the body kind of melts away, and it just takes a little bit longer and stuff. It's a slow process, and some people just don't feel like, they think, well, the person has really suffered enough. I don't want them suffering anymore.
So they don't want to put the idea of putting them in fire.
That's
in
right.
flames.
It's exactly it. And so they'll do it like that. So that's also another venue that people do. And then, of course, you have people doing anatomical donations where they're donating their body to SLU or WashU or Logan.
So you're right, that would rule out cremation.
Yeah,
Right.
those are all ones. But then some of those places also use like
Parts, for lack of a better way.
They'll use cremation after the schools are done with whatever, and
Exactly.
and things along those lines. And then you have Mid-America Transplant that's always looking for donations of body parts and stuff like that, and organs. And so those are all things that kind of come in play. And like I say, they look for different venues and different things to do, and people celebrate differently in terms of maybe they say, oh, we're going to go to a bar or something as opposed to doing a church service. And so it's kind of whatever you want goes nowadays.
And I remember when I was growing up, it was very common to have 2 days of visitation and the third day a funeral. You don't see that anymore. And I would think that would be because of the cost.
Not usually. I mean, it's actually, I think it's just because people are on a faster pace and stuff. But we still have a couple of those a year, maybe, where they'll have 2 or 3 night visitations, mostly 2. And then they'll have it like a traditional one. They'll go to a church and have the cemetery deal and everything like that.
And don't you think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the friends and family are more likely scattered geographically? So if you give notice, like 4 days notice, that you're going to be having this event, then clearly there are people who just can't come. And I think if they go out a month or Or how often people will go out if they're doing a celebration of life thing?
Well, I don't know. It really depends. We've had people that have done cremations and then had celebrate, especially with COVID. Like we just had some they passed last year. So it might be 6, 8, 9 months
I've heard
away.
of this.
Yes,
Yeah.
we've had some like that. Some that we just buried.
And and the advantage of that is that everybody can plan to come who wants to come.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
and that's what they do. They take tallies. The family will take a tally. Can you come this day, this day, this day? And that's how they set it up, and then that's how we have it.
Do you think the celebration of life services are becoming more popular?
Well, I think all of them are celebrations of life. It's just a little bit different. You see more people. Some people don't come, and so they'll do more Zoom stuff. We'll be doing Zoom stuff, and we'll
It's
be
hard to imagine. Zoom funeral.
Yeah. Well, primarily what they do is they Zoom the service. They don't Zoom much else than that, but it'll be the service, and they want to hear the people talk and say the eulogies about the deceased individual, But there was quite a bit of that going on, and we're still doing some now, but not as frequently. Some people are like, "Oh, wait, I need to get this over with. I need to move on." So those are the ones that want to do it as quickly as they can, and then the other ones are like, "Well, we still want to do it, but we want to do it with all the family, and as many family members that can come. And if it's 6 months, if it's 9 months, that's what they're doing."
Yeah, yeah. And have we seen the trend in your business that we've seen in so many, where there are national companies that tend to acquire locals, and it's dominated more by, I'm trying not to use the word chain, but a brand that is national? Has that ever affected the funeral home business?
Yes, it has affected it in the respect that there are more people. I think when they have those chain type situations with funeral homes, they don't seem to be as personable. Okay, and don't get me wrong. I think all those people have compassion just because they're in the industry.
Sure.
But they have more requirements, and and to do certain things and get stuff done, and as opposed to taking time with families and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I see it anyway.
Well, and it still seems to be something dominated by local names, like your name. I mean, Buchholz is, it's a name people associate with the business, and that's, I think that this is, what you do is more intimate than many other things. There aren't many businesses that are more intimate than dealing with the subject of death. So I think people like to have a familiar name. You think
Yes,
that's
I
part
think
of
they do, and I think it helps, that you've been around for a long time and people know and have heard your name, and other people come to it and say, "Hey, yeah, that I had a service there, and it was good, and the people were good, and,
Right.
and I felt good at going to them, that I was glad we did it."
So, if you would talk about how people deal with cost. There's insurance available, I know, so we want to cover that. But tell us what you see in terms of percentages. Do they have any sort of insurance or plans in advance? Is that a minority?
For the people we deal with, I'd say it's a minority. I would say like maybe only 10% of the people have an
really?
insurance. Yeah, they seem to pay mostly with cash, or they can, of course, will accept an assignment on a policy. And if they're writing one, some of the funeral homes, we don't handle them, but we don't write with insurance. Our funds are all trusted. We trust them. Ours are trusted here locally with United Missouri Bank.
What does that mean, trusted?
Well, the money's put in trust. So like when somebody does pay,
Pay premiums
pay money down, put money down for what their wishes are. Those costs get frozen. A lot of them get frozen, and that money goes into into a trust, which is with United Missouri Bank, who also holds the trust for most of the funeral homes in the St. Louis, in the metropolitan areas of all throughout the state of Missouri.
And so this is an alternative to insurance. This is where
Yes.
people are just putting money down in advance.
Yes.
And do they lock in the price by doing that?
Well, we'll lock in our services, okay, and we'll lock in a lot of the other things, but some things we can't lock in, like cemetery costs. If you're going to have a religious service, if there's honorariums for priests and servers and organists and cantors.
So third-party charges
Yeah.
relating to the event itself are things you can't control.
can't.
No, right. We can't control those, but we can, take a cash fund so that people will have some of that money paid for if they want to help out the family. Most of the people make the arrangements because either they feel a need because maybe they were through it and had a family member that passed away, a mother or father or something, and they're like, oh, that was just terrible. I don't want my kids to have to go through that. And
They want to ease the burden on their family.
They want to ease the burden on their family, and so that's why they do it. And then the family member might want to do that. I mean, they'll say, "Yeah, I got to do this." I remember how it was for doing my husband's or whatever the situation is.
Yeah.
And so they're eager to do it, and when they do it, they feel so much relieved and that they've done it.
So what is the range of costs today? Some people have familiarity with what costs run watching this, but I know that there's some who don't, who haven't been in a position to where they were involved in paying for the death or covering that for a loved one. What's the range of costs that exist?
Well, you're probably talking about, like, for a traditional service, probably $8,000 to $10,000. And then you might be talking in another $1,500 in cash advances, which is like the newspaper, like I'm saying, those ones that,
to publicize.
Stuff like that.
And people don't do that as much anymore either.
No, they definitely don't. And it's because it's gotten so expensive. And they're like, and then they'll, like we offer, we'll put it up on our website at no charge. And they'll be like, oh, we'll just tell people to take a look at that.
So how much does an ad to post a funeral notice now cost?
Well, if you do a 3-liner, it's like $62. After that, it jumps pretty quick to $300, $500. Some of those ones that you see that are
A display ad.
with
a
photo and everything like that. They'll run easily. We have number of them that run over $1,000.
See, my mom's, I remember in 2005, and I did the photo, and I think it was around $300-$400, something like that.
Well, they've jumped a lot since then. I mean, most of them now, if you do anything beyond three lines, which is abbreviating when you're telling people when the service is, and that's without a photo and everything, then you're talking about $300, $500, $1,000.
And the go-to publication is typically what, the Post-Dispatch?
Post-Dispatch.
Yeah.
Now, I imagine a lot of people would use Facebook, too.
Yes, they do.
A lot of people do.
They'll do that, too. And, like if you list in the obituary how you certain ways, then that's an additional charge. If you list, go to our website or something like that, then they postal charge additional for that.
So let's say 8,000 to 10,000 would be like average, would you say?
Yes, I'd say
And that's
that.
visitation and then the
That's
service.
traditional versus maybe on a cremation, you might be talking maybe $1,500 to $3,500 or something like that.
Big difference, isn't there?
Yeah, it's about half the price, and it just depends what they want to do. And then so many people actually have a gathering afterwards, too,
Yeah.
where they'll go to a restaurant or something like that, too.
Or their church.
Yeah.
A lot of times
Well,
it's
they'll
held
go to
at their,
church, back to church.
a social hall at their church, right?
Sure.
Yeah, to have a meal maybe. So have you seen those prices, though, go up a lot in the last year? Were they hugely affected by this inflation that's been hitting some things more than others?
Well, merchandise, of course, did go. Like caskets, they even had surcharges. We received like 3 notices on surcharges on caskets. So let's start off like maybe $25, $35 for a casket in addition in terms of our cost, and then it would go. Then it's up at $135 now. So,
and that's above the list price.
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's over and above that. Yeah. So yeah, those are some of the things, and then of course flowers. Everything has gone up in terms of cost. So it's a big inflation beater in terms of that. I mean, it'll control a lot of those kind of costs, and we haven't changed our cost for services hardly at all. It's only been in merchandise, really.
So with these prepaid funeral plans, how exactly does that work? I mean, I imagine the person gets to choose, whatever details, what they want to be laid out in, what music they want, things like that.
Yes, they choose all those things. Primarily, we get we want to get the vitals on someone so that we have that information for them. Okay, so because some people, you ask them, okay, what's grandma's name? What was grandma's name before she got married? What's her maiden name? Gosh, I don't know. That's grandma.
Why do you have to know that? I was curious.
That's for death certificates. You have to have the husband and wife, the parents of the decedent.
Oh, the parents. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
But the kids that are doing the arrangement, that's their grandma that we're asking about, and they don't know that. They may have died before they were even born.
Right.
So that's the kind of stuff that you get that information and Social Security numbers and find out what kind of services they want. Well, we want to go to a church, or we don't want to go to a church, or we want to have a visitation. And they'll tell us how long they think will be good, and we just make notes about all that kind of stuff.
So how often, though, is it the deceased who's coming in and sitting down and saying, I want to do this?
The deceased to be, you mean?
Deceased to be, yes.
Not too many of the deceased come in like that.
Yeah, that would be very unusual.
So
that's another show.
Yeah. We'll have to go into the supernatural.
Yeah.
Anyway, so tell me, how often does this person come in and sit down? I would feel weird sitting across the table and saying, now, this is the songs that I want sung. This is the way I want it done. It would
actually
just seem strange
a
to me.
lot of people do that, and again, it's because they had an experience with maybe their husband, or maybe their wife passed, or their parents, and it was really a burden for them.
Yeah.
To go through those choices and make those choices. So they'll tell you what they want to do, and of course, it can be changed. The people can change it later on, and some do. Some do, but mostly they try to adhere to whatever was chosen. Yeah.
What's the most unusual request you ever had from someone that was coming to you with their plan?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what's the most unusual. There's lots of them that, we have different things that they like to do for the service, and most of those we don't know till the last minute. It'll be like, oh, Dad was a golfer. We want to put golf balls and his clubs in there with him. Or
there's probably lots of things similar to that.
Yeah, fishing poles, baseballs, bats, all that kind of stuff. We get lots of requests to do stuff like that. Cans of beer.
Really?
Oh yeah, cans of beer and you'll get bottles of wine or whatever. People want to put that stuff in there.
Yeah.
We don't worry about it too much. Sometimes you're going along and all of a sudden that golf ball that was there is rolling and you can hear it plop, plop, plop. Stuff like that.
Something I've never heard of being done, but it would seem to make sense to me. And that's for somebody to make a recording of, a speech that they would make at their funeral, or, just to talk to the people there at the funeral. Maybe that comes across as morbid. I've never seen it done, never heard of it being done, but it would be interesting to be able to go to a funeral and hear somebody, if they know they're dying, so maybe they're in their last week, 2 weeks. Some people fit that profile,
sure.
Others you never know. But for those people to be able to talk to the people at their funeral, it would be spooky, but Have you ever seen anything like that?
I've seen it only on like YouTube and stuff like that.
Okay.
Or like I've seen where they had one where some guy made a recording and everybody was at the gravesite and and he was going, "Oh, let me out of here. Let me out of here."
Oh my goodness.
And everybody was in hysterics.
Oh my goodness.
That guy had a sense of humor.
Very much so.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, anything goes nowadays. It used to be like traditionally, like, they'd have the visitation and then they'd have the service, like maybe at our place or at a church or something like that. Well, we have them where they'll go, nope, let's have the service first or let's have the burial first. Let's go back. We'll then have a gathering visitation, and then we'll go to church after that. I mean, so you can take
Really?
Oh yeah, it's like
I've never been
the
to a
shell
service
game
like that.
Yeah, it's like a shell game. They do whatever, like people tell us what they want to do, and that's what we do.
Well, it is a little clunky whenever you go first to the church, and then you gather there and you do some visiting there, and you have a ceremony, we'll say, and then you leave and you go somewhere. Some people go, some people don't, and then sometimes only certain people are asked to go, like family. So then that is an hour and a half, whatever it ends up being, and then they typically return somewhere, maybe in my case, it's often to the church where I've been involved in funerals. But, I can see where there's a certain efficiency if you had the burial first.
Yeah, but most of the time, people want to have that time where there's a casket burial or where they have photos there to help remember that person. And then that brings to mind to people to talk about that. And it's that conversation that they have with other members, people visiting, friends and stuff like that, that helps them realize that someone has passed, especially if it's in something that happened very quickly and was unexpected.
Now,
Yeah.
talking about the photos and the videos, who puts together the videos? Does the
Most of the
funeral-
time, the family, we do it, but most of the time the family will say, "Hey, we have a flash drive. Can we play it here?" And I said, we'll be like, "Yeah, sure.
But I'm saying something that's produced and put together.
Well, that's usually what they'll do. I mean,
The
most
family
people-
will do it?
A lot of times the family, I would say probably 80% of the time at least.
Most people are pretty literate with that sort of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Nowadays.
Especially all the
nowadays.
What you'll get is you'll get some younger one, somebody even younger to be like
The
a
grandkid.
techie. You'll get a techie that'll do it and say, "Oh yeah, give me the pictures. I'll do that. I'll put that together and we'll put some background music with it." And
So is entertainment's the wrong word, performers or a song or something, is that as common today as it was 20 years ago?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think they like to play songs that they want to play, like whatever they want. I mean, we play a lot of Frank Sinatra. I Did It My Way, stuff like
Sure.
that. Just people have, all kinds. I mean, we play some that, that would be something like Meatloaf would play. Even I remember those.
Really?
Oh yeah, and you're like, what the heck is going on here?
So
But if that's what they want, that's what we play.
I'm sure you remember a time when virtually anybody who went to a funeral would feel obliged to put on a dark suit or a tie and jacket. And that's gone. That's long gone.
Yeah,
isn't
no,
it?
I mean, we see people in shorts, we'll see them come in casual clothes, whatever anything goes nowadays. Like I said, it's whatever you want to do.
Yeah. So let's talk for a second about the difference, though, between a prepaid plan and the insurance plan. Maybe there isn't much of a difference, but most people, I think you indicated, go ahead and they'll contact you in advance. They'll make arrangements to create this account, which is in trust. The funds are protected, and et cetera. So I see the advantages of that. But when you think about insurance policies that are sold around the country, do you see a lot of that payment through that method?
Well, not that much, really. Like I said, it's not
what you normally see.
It's not what we see. I mean, I'm not saying that's not a good method to use. We do have people all the time. I saw one recently where somebody had, through their work, had a life insurance that they could
Convert.
yes, convert to the deceased.
Yeah.
And this was a young person that had passed. And I had not seen any of those before.
Wow.
But that was something that's different. But you never know. I mean, like, we will do whatever, we'll try and work whatever they can, however they want to do it. It's easiest for us and for them if they put the money out and we do the cash. But if they want to buy a policy, fine. We take the pre-need information and we call it an info one. So, and we hold on to that yet too.
Now, how is it executed at the time of the person's death? I think I understand that the person names people listed on the plan to carry it out. Is that?
Well, when we first get, when someone passes, we'll get a phone call, okay? And whether it's whether they passed in St. Louis at the house or residence, or they're down in Florida on a vacation, they should call us first if that's what they know they want to do, because then we can either arrange it down there or arrange up in St. Louis here where they're going to go, and what if they have a prearrangement, then we have a lot of the details of what's needed and what they're going to want.
So it's transferable.
Yeah,
You
it can be
transfer it.
it can be transferred, but then we can also arrange with somebody down in Florida to do the pickup at the place of death, and then if we have to have them embalmed, then we might have it embalmed down there and ship the remains transported back up here. By plane, usually.
But I can see how time is kind of the essence, because it makes more sense for you to know while the person is there at the hospital, say they just passed away, and then the body would be transported directly from the hospital to your mortuary. Is that right?
Yes.
Typically.
Yes, we would have our people do that, go pick up as soon as they're released from the hospital. Okay, and then in the interim, there might be a situation where Mid-America is going to be picking up some organs from the deceased. They will contact the family. That the hospitals know to contact them immediately, and they do. And then they will call the family and ask them. There's a lot of times it happens they're in transit to us, and they'll say, "Oh, can you reroute them to Mid-America Transplant so that we can perform our stuff?"
So those
it has to be done prior to embalming.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And probably in a sterile environment, in a facility, maybe at the hospital or at their facility.
Yeah, they have their own facility, and it's not done at the hospital, but it's their own facility, and I'm sure that's what the situation is.
Yeah, to protect those organs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then the death certificate, you all prepare typically?
Yeah. Well, so when that person calls us and let us know, we will then set up a time, usually like the next day, so that they can come in. We can review the information we have, make sure nothing has changed, like their address or whatever the situation is, and review everything like that it's all correct, because that's how it's going to be on the death certificate, and you need to have it right, especially like Social Security numbers and stuff like that. And then if you get somebody that's a veteran, they need to be sure to have that DD-214 form so that they can get in, whether it's for them or for their spouse, so they could get into Jefferson Barracks if that would be a choice that they would want.
Mm-hmm. And so it's a separate transaction to buy the cemetery plot.
Yes, it is.
That's something independent of the arrangements with you. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is all independent.
That's the cemetery. And typically, how much does that cost?
Well, the plots vary with the cemetery, whatever one it is, because they're all independent. Okay. And
let's say Calvary, for example.
I'm not sure what they charge for their plots, but their opening charge, a regular depth, is about $1,400 right now. And if you go extra deep, which would mean you bury one lower first, and then somebody could be buried on top.
Is that commonly done?
It is done sometimes, and it is done all the time at Jefferson Barracks. You know, and then if there's anybody, a veteran that has some family member that is a challenged individual, or has some issues and has it verified, they can possibly be buried at Jefferson Barracks too. They have changed some of the rules recently where they have to get it re-verified. Like they may not have it verified when they were born 20 years ago or 30 years ago or something, and then all of a sudden they pass. Well, in order for the child, the minor, who was a minor at that time, they have to have like a recent certification from a doctor that they were under that care and they still suffered some of those problems or had those issues. And if they do, then that allows them to have burial at Jefferson Barracks with the veteran and the family.
And so when you have, though, people that are buried on top of others, that extra deep, is that somebody that's always related?
Yeah, usually.
Okay.
Yes. And there are other issues, like some of the cemeteries now are starting to they're like leasing space. But I mean, that's all like really technical and really crazy. You don't hear that much of that.
So when I'm looking at the costs here, where 8 to 10 is just average in like the funeral, and then you have some additional costs.
You're probably talking another close to for the extra charges. If you had to purchase a lot and everything, you're probably talking another $2,500, and then the opening of the charge with that, opening of the grave with that, and then if you turn around and get a marker, you can be talking another, even a small marker, another $2,400 or something like that on top of these. Yes,
the small ones.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're at $15,000 pretty quickly.
I would say if you get the whole, if you're talking about the whole thing, I mean, sometimes there's space already there, and there's a monument there, and they just have to do lettering.
Right.
And then you're only talking a few $100s or something like that. But it kind of depends what they want to do. Some people want to, buy space and buy it for the whole family.
So people who've not prepaid or who've not bought funeral insurance, is there financing available? Have you had people come in and you can just tell that the family doesn't have any money and they're saying, how do we get financing?
When they make payments, they can make payments on a pre-need, and if they pay it off within a year, we don't charge anything extra.
But now
if it's somebody's at need and passes like that, we try and work something out so that they can do it and work with their budget or whatever the situation is. We try to do whatever we can to work with anybody that needs the situation.
And we also see the GoFundMes.
Yeah,
Really?
you see some of that.
God. This recently.
This is a thing?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I know somebody that just lost their teenager suddenly, and somebody started a GoFundMe, and within 2 days, $15,000 was raised.
Really? And that was for funeral expenses?
Yes.
Yeah, it does happen. We have had some like that.
Well, it's hard. How do you keep up with these changes?
You just do whatever you can to help the families.
Especially when you don't have a child that's in the business to say, Dad, look, they're not doing that anymore. Or Dad, this is how this software
I hear that
works.
all the time, even though my daughters are out of town.
I have 2 daughters, too. I'm starting to hear it. So, but, it's been Buchholz, the idea of not having Buchholz in St. Louis area in the funeral business just seems...
Doesn't seem right.
I don't see it yet, so...
Well, you plan to be here another 30 years, I'm sure.
Well, I'm sure. I don't think it'll happen, but I'm sure that's what I plan.
Now, what does happen if someone gets a prepaid funeral plan and that funeral home goes out of business? It will transfer to some other...
Right. Yeah. Usually what happens is, for instance, the funeral home might sell, and they would also be purchasing the funeral plans, the prepaid plans.
So they would recognize.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Or the other option is that they could go to another funeral home.
Yeah, because the funds are in trust.
Yeah. So it's not really, they just have to sign some papers and send some letters and stuff like that.
Now, when a person goes in and purchases this prepaid funeral plan, do family members often come with them, or are they doing this solo?
No, most of the time it's not done solo. Usually there's more than one person there. Maybe the other person that's with them is a son or another sibling or something, so that more than one person knows what the plan is or what the idea is. So they just kind of share it. And actually, a lot of the pre-needs are very lighthearted. People laugh a lot about them, I guess, because they can make the jokes about it and stuff while people are living.
Yeah.
And and it's relaxing for them. They are so overwhelmed with it. And then when the person does pass away, they're like, "Oh, we're so glad we did this before."
Mm-hmm.
It would have been so hard.
Yeah, because
hard.
easing the burden on the family members, they're dealing with the grief, loss of their loved one, and then having to go and plan their loved one's funeral. It's a lot.
And then not only that, then they have all kinds of other things. Oh my gosh, what about the house? What about the cars? What about this? What about that? How many titles do I need? To change titles on all these things that they have and take care of all that. And it can be overwhelming.
That's why we do a lot of shows on estate planning, don't we?
Yeah, I was thinking that sounds like this meeting you're describing could turn into an estate planning meeting. You should probably have the lawyer there too, and you just take care of everything.
There you go.
Well, there are some similarities because with estate planning, and this has to be true too for many people relating to planning for their funerals, a lot of people just don't want to do estate planning because the idea is maybe depressing, or they just don't want to think about it, or maybe they think it's not going to come anytime soon. And then all of a sudden it comes, and then the kids are standing around thinking, it really would have been much easier if mom and dad had made this clear. Sometimes it's a matter of just a conversation with the kids. And this may tie in with you too, is let's assume that the parent has done some estate planning. But, it might come, some of the things that were decided might come as a surprise to some of the kids, and this happens all the time. So because the parent didn't want to sit down at Thanksgiving or some other time and sit down with the kids and say, look, let me give you a heads up. This is the way I've planned my estate. If they had done that, there might have been some ill feelings at the time or whatnot, but everybody would have been on board. But when it's unveiled by a lawyer after the person's gone, then it's an invitation.
It's upsetting.
So
I guess then the parent will typically bring kids, probably more commonly, right?
Yep. I would say yes. You always try and have somebody else there, so that they know what the situation is and what they want to do. And then we make notes and they go, oh, they want to play that song? Oh, okay. I mean, sometimes it helps them because they're like, oh, I don't know what songs to play. I don't know what to do. And then if we have some notes regarding it, it just helps. Any little thing helps.
Yeah.
Anything
I
that
can
you
imagine.
can help them with.
Huh. And tell me what is the typical time in advance that somebody does this? Have you seen people do this in their 50s who are healthy?
Yeah. They'll do it in the 50s. They'll do it 60s, 70s, wherever they want. Sometimes they'll do it because they got a bad notice and that they're going to pass and they're only going to live so long.
That's what I would think would be most
You get
common.
some of those, and then you also get ones that are in the situation where, you know what, I'm sick. I've been sick for a long time, and I'm going to have to go on state aid. So I need to spend my money down and get it down to $999.99.
You know about this. Yeah, it's common when you're doing, this is Medicaid planning, folks. But it's, one of the legislative provisions is that you're allowed to spend money for your funeral. And it's foolish to not go ahead and take advantage of that when you can. It's not held against you as having an asset that will be counted for Medicaid purposes. So,
whereas insurance can be counted.
Yeah.
Insurance could be whatever the
cash value.
Cash surrender value is.
Yeah.
And that's not good.
Now, do you ever get someone that says, I don't want any type of service at all, I just want to be buried or cremated?
Sure. That happens. People say that, just like, one of the famous ones that people say all the time, or if they're going to have a casket burial, just put me in a pine box. I just want to go in a pine box. So you get stuff like that is repeated.
Do you ever get family members afterwards very upset because they needed that closure by, having the service?
I think most people feel very relieved if they've had that opportunity, because maybe the person that we're talking about maybe was really sick for a while and suffered and did not look well. And if we can make that deceased person look more like they thought they should, then they're very happy, and that makes them feel better. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, this person looks so much better than when we saw him in the hospital or wherever. It gives them a better memory. They don't want that bad memory of looking that they suffered and they had IVs and all that stuff. So all that kind of helps.
But you can only do so much.
Yes, that's true.
Well, and I think that's why some people opt for the closed casket.
Sure. Yeah, we don't see that many that opt for that.
No?
No, No, if they're going to have a casketed burial, most of them will open up, have it opened in terms of the casket, and then that's the private time that we have for families. If they come in and they view the person and they would say, no, we don't want to close it, or we don't want anybody else to see them, we would close it. But we personally don't have that issue. I have good embalmers.
Yeah. Well, my husband, that really upsets him, the open casket, but I'm just the opposite. I want to see the person. It brings me closure, being able to say.
Sure. Everybody's different.
Yeah.
Everybody. So it's however it feels. And some people will avoid some of that and not go to the funeral home, but they'll go to a service at a church because then they don't have to view them or something like that. Or they'll go late so that they don't have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it's interesting that the substantial majority, if they have a coffin or have somebody there in a casket, then they will have it open at the service.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that's been my experience too, what I've seen. So very interesting, Tom. This is really a fascinating subject, and maybe in part it's because people don't talk about it that often. I mean, in your world, you talk about it all the time. But
that's right.
But people just don't want to because they find it morbid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if they're being touched at that time by someone that's sick in their family, or they're concerned about somebody or a friend or something, they don't want to talk about that. And I can't say I blame them, but eventually they have to. Somebody's got to.
Well, marvelous information. I know that people will have questions. We'll have follow-up information, which will be available on the website for Buchholz Funeral Homes. This has been Tom Buchholz. Thank you. Fascinating subject. With that, this has been another episode of Life's Third Act. Take care.
You've been listening to Life's Third Act, a podcast for thriving in retirement, sponsored by TuckerAllen, your estate and elder law advisors. Each week, we discuss topics and answer questions to help you better plan for your future. For more information, visit TuckerAllen.com. Subscribe and listen again next week for another edition of Life's Third Act. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely on advertisements.